A massive tech company faces a crisis when its main machine breaks down. In a moment of arrogance, the CEO orders a young woman, a janitor's daughter, to fix it, without realizing who her father is, or who she truly is. In the heart of a gleaming high-tech facility, machines hummed in perfect synchrony, digital displays pulsing with precision. Employees in sleek uniforms moved briskly, their movements a testament to the rhythm of innovation. Everything seemed under control, until it wasn't. A sharp alarm pierced the calm. One of the central processing units, a core component of the company's latest prototype, had failed, right in the middle of a live investor demonstration. Monitors flickered, systems stalled, and panic spread like wildfire. Footsteps thundered across the operations floor as the CEO burst in, his face flushed with pressure. The room tensed. His gaze darted across the room, searching for someone to blame, someone to fix it. Anyone. His eyes landed on a young black woman in a janitor's uniform, quietly mopping near the service bay. Her presence, humble and routine, seemed almost invisible in the chaos. Without hesitation, he pointed at her and barked sarcastically, "Why don't you fix it?" "My engineers clearly can't." Laughter broke out, sharp, uncomfortable. Some looked down, others exchanged awkward glances. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't speak. She simply put her mop aside, walked over to the malfunctioning machine, and knelt beside it. Her movements were calm, deliberate, nothing like someone who didn't belong. As she ran her fingers along the panel's edge, the scene faded into the past. A dimly lit workshop echoed with the clinks and clatters of tools. A younger version of the woman, no more than 10, sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, wide-eyed, watching her father, also in janitor's overalls, tinker with old circuit boards and motors after hours. She asked questions, and he answered patiently, guiding her tiny hands over wires and diagrams. Long after the building emptied, she stayed, absorbing the quiet language of mechanics. Back in the present, she opened the machine's panel with practiced ease, her fingers tracing wires like old friends. Around her, engineers froze, unsure whether to stop her or watch. The CEO, arms crossed, still didn't take her seriously. But something about her confidence unnerved him. Just a flicker, buried under ego. No one noticed the shift in the room. No one saw the janitor's daughter transforming into something else, something far greater than they imagined. Not yet. But the machine, silent and broken, was about to meet someone who understood it better than anyone in the building. And the CEO had no idea what was coming. The woman knelt beside the broken machine, her movements precise and steady. She unlatched the panel with a gentle click, as if opening a familiar book. The engineering team, now gathered in a semicircle behind her, exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't hesitation or guesswork. It was confidence. She reached for a diagnostic tool from the nearby station, her hands moving without pause, scanning internal circuits and voltage lines like she'd done it 1,000 times before. She began speaking aloud, not to explain herself, but out of habit. Technical terms flowed from her lips with clarity and purpose. Power relay bypassed. Signal path distorted. Sensor feed corrupted. Her voice was calm, rhythmic, as if reciting a language only a few could understand. The room fell silent. One of the junior engineers blinked in disbelief, whispering under his breath, "Did she just say signal degradation due to loopback interference?" The CEO stood a few feet away, arms folded, an eyebrow raised. Confusion crept into his expression, slowly replacing his mockery with disbelief. "You really think you know what you're doing?" he snapped, his tone teetering between sarcasm and unease. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She simply adjusted a wire, tightened a contact point, and continued tracing the issue. His words bounced off her like static noise. Whispers traveled through the group. A senior engineer, graying at the temples, leaned toward a colleague and murmured, "I know her. Years ago, she used to come here with her father, always asking questions, watching everything. She was a genius even then." The colleague stared at him, stunned. "She's that girl?" Meanwhile, the woman replaced a damaged module, rebooted the subunit, and adjusted the load parameters. Her mind moved faster than the tools in her hand. The machine began to respond. Flickers of light pulsed along its interface. A hum returned to its core. The crowd stiffened. The CEO opened his mouth again, this time unsure what to say. Still, he tried. "You just got lucky," he muttered, refusing to accept what was unfolding in front of him. She didn't answer. Her focus never shifted. There was no need to explain herself, no need to prove anything to someone too blind to see. People watched, not just in surprise, but in growing respect and curiosity. Who was this woman, really? How did someone dressed like a janitor command machines better than the very engineers trained to build them? The silence that followed was not one of doubt. It was anticipation. With a final click, the woman secured the panel and stood up. A soft hum vibrated through the air as the machine powered back to life, lights blinking in perfect sequence. The room held its breath. Then, like a returning heartbeat, the system stabilized. Monitors lit up. Code streamed smoothly across the displays. The crisis was over. A wave of relieved applause broke out among the engineers and staff. The CEO, clearly thrown off, clapped as well, hesitantly, out of rhythm, as if still unsure what he was applauding for. She stepped back from the machine, wiping her hands calmly, her eyes fixed on the system she'd just brought back to life. The engineers exchanged glances, some nodding with admiration, others simply stunned. The CEO walked closer, clearing his throat, a forced smile on his face. "Well, lucky timing," he muttered, still trying to control the narrative, still unwilling to accept that someone who wore a janitor's uniform could outshine his entire technical team. The moment was interrupted by the sharp click of polished shoes on the floor. A senior board member had arrived, drawn by the emergency. He paused when he saw her. His eyes widened, not in confusion, but in recognition. "It's you," he said, stepping forward. The CEO turned, puzzled. "You know her?" he asked, almost scoffing. "Of course I do," the board member replied. "She's the one who turned down our offer last year, graduated at the top of her class in engineering, double major in systems and AI. She's been published in journals most of your staff hasn't even read." The room fell silent again, but this time with a very different weight. "She chose to stay under the radar. I heard she's been helping her father with his night shifts, quietly working on her own projects." Eyes turned toward her, some wide with awe, others red with embarrassment. The CEO blinked, slowly starting to realize the depth of his mistake. The board member wasn't done. "Her father, yes, the janitor you pass in the hall without a second glance, was once a leading inventor in the field. He walked away from it all when his wife died, to raise his daughter away from the spotlight. And now we see the results." The CEO's face turned pale. Words formed, then vanished. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had nothing to say. The woman didn't gloat. She didn't smile or boast. She simply nodded in quiet respect to the board member and turned to look at the machine one last time, her work complete. Power no longer sat in the corner office. It stood beside the machine, calm, brilliant, and underestimated until now. The CEO stepped forward, his voice low, uncertain. "I didn't know, I'm sorry," he said, his words struggling against the weight of his pride. The woman looked at him calmly, her expression unreadable. She didn't raise her voice or belittle him. She simply said, "That's the point. You didn't care to know." Her tone wasn't angry. It was firm, grounded in a truth deeper than any apology could reach. Respect isn't something you reserve for titles. It's something you offer to people, regardless of their uniform, their job, or where they came from. The CEO looked down, silence stretching between them. Around them, no one moved. No one dared to fill the space with empty noise. Then the doors at the far end of the room opened, and an older man in faded overalls stepped inside. He walked with quiet grace, his posture straight, his eyes soft. Her father, the janitor. He looked at his daughter with pride that didn't need words. For years, he had worked in the shadows, building her future while the world ignored his past. Now, that same world stood watching, humbled. As he approached, the crowd instinctively stepped aside. No one laughed now. No one underestimated him. He stood beside his daughter, and for the first time, the room saw the truth. Not a janitor and his child, but a legacy of brilliance wrapped in humility. The board member offered her a formal proposal, praising her intellect, offering her a high-ranking position. Others followed, quick to align themselves with her. But she shook her head, politely but firmly. "Thank you," she said, "but I have my own plans." She looked around the room, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "I've seen how easily potential is overlooked, how talent is ignored when it doesn't look the way you expect. I'm starting something new, where ideas speak louder than appearances, where no one has to prove they belong." There was nothing else to say. The engineers watched in awe. The CEO remained silent, finally understanding the lesson that had arrived in the form of the very person he had dismissed. She turned to her father, and he smiled, proud not just of her brilliance, but of her strength, her grace, and her unshakable sense of self. Together, they walked out, past the machines, past the people who had once looked right through them, past the man who now understood just how wrong he had been. They didn't need validation. They carried their worth with them, step by step, leaving behind not just a fixed machine, but a room forever changed. And in that silence, they left behind something more valuable than invention: respect.